guys, it's Jenny with the Go Box, and today we're learning watercolor. I'm going to guide you step by step through this fun little nighttime lighthouse scene. And this one I love because it's got a little bit of a illustration thing going on too, with the rope and the buoys or flotation devices, whatever those are called. And then you've got the stars and then the white shine from the lighthouse, those are all done with the ink pens that you got in your kit. And then we'll go through step by step through the whole process of creating this. The ink work is one of the last things we do, so we don't have to worry about that right away. Color-wise, first let's talk about what you're going to be needing. Supplies and colors. So in your kit, I'll set this aside, you will have gotten a white Posca marker. These are great white paint pens, and they come in all kinds of different colors. So if you do decide you really love working with these, you can buy them in all kinds of different colors. They're not cheap, but they are super awesome, something to collect along the way as you kind of build up your art supplies. We have a black micron marker. So you might have an 08 or an 05. They're really close to the same. They're not too small and they're not too big. They're perfect for doing this little illustration work we're gonna do. It has a nice little tip on the end there. And it's just black. Brushes. A lot of you guys have your own brushes. And a lot of you buy the brushes that are available on gobox.com. I love the Princeton brushes. I've been using them for quite a while, and this is the series 4050, and I use a number 6 and a number 2. These get me through just about all the projects that we have in this latest, this first kit that we just put out. So this will get you through all those, but just if you're providing your own brushes with watercolor brushes, they're a little floppier than acrylic brushes, but they're not too floppy. These are sable, and I really love the way that they glide across the paper and hold the paint and all of that. I've been, like I said, I've been working with those for quite a while. I am self-taught. I have been teaching myself watercolor for about 2 years. I've been really nervous to teach it. This is actually my first class teaching to students. I've taught some teachers before, and I've taught my friend's mom before when her daughter was in the hospital, and we were just kind of killing the time throughout the day. I sat down next to her and we did a watercolor class right there in the hospital. But yeah, so I'm very much I'm not ahead of you guys by a long shot. I've been painting since I was 16, which is many years ago, but always with acrylic or oil. So watercolor has been very new for me, and I really am just loving it. And I hope you guys do too. It's very different. You'll feel very different than, you'll feel probably a little nervous because with acrylic paint, you can paint over something. And with watercolor, it's a little more challenging than that. The one thing that surprised me the most was how much layering we do with watercolor. It's insane, the amount of layering you do. It's like you're taking a picture and going from the palest to finally the darkest, highest contrast. So I'm going to take you through all that. One thing you'll want to have on hand today is you'll want to have your coaster. I don't know if any of you guys figured that out, but that's what we're going to use to trace the circular shape that we start with. And you'll want to have a pencil. Oh, there's mine. We are going to pencil in the ground, the cliff, the lighthouse, and the water line. We don't pencil in anything else. I will have you guys pencil in these little buoy floater shapes later on, because I think you'll feel more comfortable doing this in pencil rather than just going for it with the pen. So do have a pencil and a little water cup. I just find these. My daughter likes these desserts from Costco that come with glass ramekins and ceramic ramekins. They work perfect for watercolor, and so that's what I've been using them for. You'll have your little palette. I'll talk about the colors in a second. You'll want a paper towel for drying your brushes off. That's the one thing I found is I tend to saturate my paper towel, and I think that's something I'm working on, getting better and better, where I think I'm kind of afraid to have so much water on my painting. So I'll always dab my brush off a little bit, but I'm getting used to how that works. palette wise, going back to that, some of you guys might have, like, these are different types of palettes I've worked with in the past. Sometimes like these kind are in metal, or you might have a ceramic palette. The India ink, your Bombay Black, awesome stuff, works a lot like a watercolor. Although when you paint it on and it dries, it's dry. Unlike, like, I could come in with this dried painting, which I did quite a while ago, and use water and spread this blue out further. But the black that's in here would not spread anywhere because it's the Bombay Black. So this gray that I have in the sky, it's permanent. And I love Bombay Black India ink because it is very dark. In fact, I promise I'll get started in a minute. This is my first watercolor video, so I'm going to talk a little bit. This black right here is so dark and perfect, and that's the India ink. If I were to do this with black watercolor, it would be pale, and it would have kind of a greenish cast. It's just not going to be as midnight black. So it works great for that. You know, I have my other projects we're going to do, so I'll show you those real quick. This one's going to be coming up. I'm going to try to film videos just back to back so we have them all ready to go on May 1st, or really close to May 1st. This one is just a Tuscany sort of design. I love the colors in it. I love the purple balanced with the red, and it's a fun one to go through. Very easy. Then we have this one is just India ink in different levels of washes. So real pale in the background, real pale mountain, and then as we get closer to the foreground, we're using it with less water, less dilution there, if that's a word. And then finally, I'm not sure what order I'll put these in, but then this is the one that I sent the template and graphite paper with, because I don't expect you to draw that out. It would be very complicated and it would take forever. It'd be the longest video ever. And so using your template and graphite paper, you'll be ready to go right along with me, and you won't have to worry about coordinates and all that. So let's talk about color. Finally, let me grab a scrap piece of paper. So in your kit, I sent an extra sheet of paper. You can do whatever you want with that. You can practice on it. I highly recommend doing practice brush strokes. You can do another design on it. I think that these coasters, I love little round designs, as you can see, like this one in the Lighthouse. These are all done with the coaster. I bet you could fit two of these side by side. So you could totally do like a night scene with the Lighthouse and a daytime scene with the Lighthouse, just for practice. But let's go ahead, and if you don't want to use your watercolor paper, just use a scrap piece of paper. I'll show you the colors. So I'm going to use my number 6 brush, dip it in water first, and just blot it on the towel. And let's start with over here. It looks like black, but it's concentrated, and it is coffee brown. Our next color we're using is lemon yellow. All these are concentrated and will be diluted. Next color on the roster, we use quite a bit of this. That's our ocean blue. Perfect for painting the ocean. Great color there. Then we have our poppy red, which we'll use just for the Lighthouse. So we don't use a ton of that. Maybe just put a little tiny drop. I probably put way too much on my palette here. And finally, let's try out that India ink. Look how dark that is. Just gorgeous. I love that. It's going to turn my water really dark right now. So I'm going to start off with tinted water, and that's okay. I do like that. I've learned to love that with acrylic painting and watercolor, because you can have, it tints your paint a little bit. So these are really vibrant, and I do tend to tone them down a lot. You'll see that throughout the painting, because like this is super bright, and the yellow, I make a green with these two, and I have to tone it down with some brown because it's a little too vivid. So having tinted water, that's going to be good. Okay, so I had sketched mine out, so I'm ready to roll, but I wanted to sketch it on a piece of paper with you to get started so that we can do it together. And this one I'll sketch dark. This one you can see I did very, very light. You maybe won't be able to see it much at all on the monitor because it's so light. So the one thing I have found is your pencil lead the graphite will kind of smear all over into the watercolor and the watercolor paper. So keep your pencil lines super light. In fact, a lot of times when I've drawn something out, I'll come through and just rub really lightly with my eraser. A gum eraser works great because then you don't have to brush off the little extra bits that come off the eraser. Like one of those kneaded art erasers are wonderful. So this one I'm going to sketch dark. I don't want you to sketch yours as dark as I am because you only need to see it. And for me, I need all of you guys to see it, so I have to make mine dark. So let's take our Go Box Art Crate coaster, or any circular object you have. You could use a roll of tape. Look at that, it's like the exact right size. You could use the bottom, you could use an upside down bowl. Maybe you want a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller picture. Feel free to do that. I'm starting us out kind of small because this is new for all of us. So let's take our coaster, and I put mine in the center, but you've got, like I said, you've got room to do too. So if you want to put it off to the side, do that. If you want to make it like this and then do a color chart just for fun, like these are all the colors, this is what when you mix these together, this is what you get. That's always fun. I love doing that kind of thing. But just wherever you put your coaster down, hold your finger down and just zip around the edges real light. And these little cardboard coasters, they're really cool and fun. They do have a little part on them, though, that kind of bumps out a little bit, and I think that's just when they print them and they have them so they're ready. I don't know how they would do it, but it ends up with these little tiny knobs on the, so you might end up with a little bump out here and there, but don't worry about it. Our nautical rope is going to cover that. Okay, so now we're going to draw the cliff and the waterline and the lighthouse. So let's take a look here. This is it's a little higher than the halfway point here. If I were to draw a line straight through the middle, we're going to go a little higher than that. And it's actually, we start out flat. I want a nice flat area for the lighthouse to sit. And I'll have a look here. Do I need to make it down further? Or do you want a big lighthouse or a little lighthouse or something in between? So I just will sketch that in there. And then this is going to go down at an angle. Don't worry about making it look natural right now because we'll do that with the paint. Then I have this little cliff here where somebody could stand there if they're really brave. So that's just going to kind of go out here. It can go straight across or it can go down at a slight angle. And then finally this just sort of goes off to, it's coming off the bottom here. So it's very angular. And my water line, the horizon line here, it is, so the halfway point of this would probably be about here. But I dropped it down from there about a 1/4 inch or so. Just to, I don't know, I think I wanted more sky showing. And I'll sketch that out. If you want to use a ruler or straight edge here, you can. Remember, I'm making my pencil lines dark, only so you guys can see what I'm doing. Keep yours on the light side. If you accidentally go a little dark, just plan on erasing a bit. So look at this. We're pretty close to being done with the sketching part. So let's figure out our lighthouse. I don't put it too close to the cliff's edge. I want a little space there because obviously years of erosion would not work unless this is a rock. You know, the lighthouse shouldn't be too close to the edge. So I'm going to put mine back just a little bit. And I am making so Paul, when he teaches the lighthouse, he calls it a peppermill shape. Oops, I went too tall. I think I made my cliff a little tall. So you see how it's a fraction wider at the bottom than it is at the top. It just sort of tapers. And it should be longer or taller than it is wide. And then I'm going to make 2 little equal height lines that sort of go out. This will be it's kind of like the part where the lighthouse keeper can walk around. It's a railing, and let's just connect those. So it looks like we have a fancy vase. And then I do lined up with these lines, 2 short vertical lines, which this area that I'm drawing is where the actual light is going to be. So then I'm going to cap that off. I have just enough room for the little roof. So mine's really squished. You could go beyond. I do some of these circular images where I wish I had one that I could show you. I'll take and I'll go beyond in certain points. Like I have one that has fir trees that go up and out and over. I love that look. Feel free to do that if you want. Just know that your rope is going to be kind of, you'll have to work it around it. But I'm just going to extend this out real short on either side, and I want a really low, flat triangle roof. Looks like one of those little rice paddy hats. Later on, we'll take our pen and we'll draw the little spire on the top here, so you don't have to do that now. I'll just erase that. Let's go ahead and draw. I have a bold stripe that we paint red right through the middle. Doesn't really matter what size you put this. You can have a window right on the top of it or windows on either side of it. That's the cool thing. You can put as many windows as you want when you've got this finally done. And now I'm going to sketch out this grass line that goes along here. So I'm going down at an angle, but I'm sort of making it unplanned. So it's not as angular as the rest of this. And then I do the same here, only this one, since it's kind of like rock, it's going to be more straight and angled back. And then I have a little sort of cliff thing that comes up here. You can connect it if you want. This just allows me to do some like darker rocks down in here. And then right here, I'm going to just parallel this line loosely. It obviously wouldn't be perfect because it's not a perfect formation. It's been formed by nature and wind and rain and salt water. So I could actually make that a little less angular. And that's it. We're sketched out. Love it. That was pretty easy. All of the ones that we do in this project kit are very, very easy to sketch out because I didn't want to freak you guys out. So let's go ahead and get ready to get painted. Get painting. I've got mine already done with the light pencil lines. I might make them a tiny bit darker because I bet you can't even see them at all. Feel free to slightly erase anything that feels a little dark. All of this can pretty well be covered up pretty good because this rock surface gets really dark. It starts light and we layer until it gets really dark. And then really there isn't anything that will cause a major issue with pencil, but it's a good habit to get into, to get used to light pencil lines with anything, whether you're acrylic painting or watercolor or what have you. So you have your palette with the little wells. I use these larger wells for the mixing area. The India ink stains, remember I was telling you that it's dries and it's permanently dry. So it'll leave little stains on your palette. You can scratch them off a lot of times. I just use a dish brush at the end of when I'm done painting. I don't like to leave it for a long time. I have left it overnight and come back the next day and it's like impossible to get off. An old ceramic plate works perfect. It'll come right off there. Sometimes a little like bit of Bon Ami and a washcloth and you're good as new. All right, let's get started. I'm excited. This is pretty fun. I love doing watercolor. It's really relaxing and it's easy cleanup. So I do it almost every single night, partly for the practice and just partly for my own personal therapeutic needs. Okay, so let's start with this number 6 round brush. And we are going to dip it in the water and we're gonna dilute our ocean blue. So go ahead, kind of just rub your brush on the edge of the glass or whatever water jar you're using, water container. I can't talk today. It's been a long day. I prepped so many orders today. Okay, so I'm just knocking off a little excess water. I'm going to pick up the blue, bring it over here to the mixing well. Not much. And now I'm going to add water and more water and more water. I want a nice pale blue. Look at that. So when you brush it across here, you'll see it's very, very pale. And what we're going to do with this really light blue. So water is kind of like, for those of you who have been acrylic painting with me, water is kind of like your white. It's how you lighten a color, just by adding the water to it. I want to set the angle of the cloud formations. So I want this to kind of go at an upward angle. So go ahead and brush some of these in. So it should look like wind patterns right now. Don't forget over here. And now I'm going to add a little more ocean blue to that mix. And I'm going to come in around the sides. Let's see our original here. See that? And then we get to add some gray to it in a minute. I hope you guys really enjoy this as much as I do. I think the biggest thing for me is, like I said, the easy cleanup. I just love that. So before this dries, let's wash our brush. And go ahead and just dab it real lightly on the towel. Let's just take some water and blend this in. We want this light area to remain light because we're going to put some gray in there. And here especially, I don't want any lines left. I want to blend this in towards the lighthouse. Don't worry if you overlap into the cliff. It gets some green put on there later. In fact, don't really worry if you overlap just about anything. Most things can be fixed up. The lighthouse, I'll be careful around because I do want it to be kind of it ends up sort of a golden wheat color. So I'm just lightly coloring the upper half of the circle that will become the sky. And you'll know right away if it feels like you have too much paint on your brush. Just wet it down and just take some water and just blend. Look at that. It just blends around. And sometimes you'll get these areas where a lot of water was put on, and I believe that is called a bloom. I think they're really cool. They're happy little accidents. They can be covered if you don't like that happy little accident. It can be once you have your paper dry, you can definitely go back and add some more paint on top of that. So I'm going to wash this brush now. We're going to make our light gray. It's really pale right in here. Now this India ink goes a long way. And so here's what I do with that. I'm going to take and just put some water in here. And it's discolored already, no biggie. I'm going to pick up the tiniest speck of the black. You'll see it's just like the tiniest little bit goes such a long way. And already I feel like I've got a good kind of medium to light gray. Let's see how that looks. Okay, I like that. I could add a little bit more black to it. And I'm going to kind of brush it in this streaky area in the center. Maybe I'll add a tiny bit more. The more you add, the more like dramatic this will feel. Oh yeah, that's really dramatic. I wouldn't go that far, not with your first time doing this. So water is what I'll use to sort of spread it out. One cool trick I want to show you in a minute here, because I know this India ink's going to dry. This brush can also work like a sponge. So you cleaned it off, dry it off, and let's say you got too much of something. Look at that. I just sort of spin my brush along and it's going to soak it up. Then you can wash it, dry it again, or just dry it off completely. And it's going to soak up anything that felt like, oh, that was a little much. So I do want to put a little bit of gray over here. And I'll just sort of blend that out with a little water. The hardest part in the sky is right around the lighthouse because you've got this direction that you're going with the paint strokes, and suddenly we're asked to like paint around this vertical angular object here. So that's the one part that it can be a little frustrating. Just work through it. And just know it's going to come together. I've got a lot of color blooming going on in here just because I added more water to spread out that India ink. It's going to dry fast. I'll just add a little more gray back in here. You can play around with how much water works. What does this amount of water do? Or what does this amount of paint do? That is exactly how I taught myself. And there were some frustrating times. For sure. I have a lot of paintings that I probably won't ever show anybody. So at any time you can come back with your blue and just streak some more blue back in there. If this is too wet, just wait a bit or grab a hairdryer like we do with the acrylic paint. These little bold streaks in here will end up looking like clouds, in theory. Every time I've done this same project, it's ended up slightly different. So like this was the second one I did. The first one I did was here. And you can see it's just the way the paint sort of blooms in with the water. And just the amount of layering. The lighthouse on this one was quite a bit smaller. Not sure which one I like better. I'm going to make a little more blue with water. And probably just go along the top here and brush down, just letting my brush run out of paint. So that way I have some nice dark blue up in here where the stars will really be set apart up in there. You can always go back at any time. We're gonna skip around a lot on this paper as we work through certain areas while other areas dry. You can always go back and rework anything in the sky, because really the only time that we won't be able to do that is when we put the stars on, which is one of the later things. So you can always just keep working on it gradually, a little bit at a time. All right, just using a tiny damp brush here. I think that's pretty good. It's got just enough gray, just enough blue. I feel like around my lighthouse did work out pretty good. I could come down here and add some bluish streaks, real light, using the very tip of the bristles of the brush. Kind of like the clouds are sort of collecting down here along the horizon. All right. So far, so good. Remember, you can always come back and rework the sky a little bit. Letting it dry a bit is always good. One thing I just realized I forgot to mention. I do tape down my projects while I'm working on them. I have been lazy before and not done it, and it works out fine, but the tape really keeps your paper pretty flat. And I just use regular masking tape or painter's tape. Just tape the corners. Sometimes in some projects I'll probably have tape a border around everything. Like on this Tuscany project, that should have been done, but it was just one of those things where I just kept going and realized I forgot and was like, oh well, it's too late. So I'll show you how to do that when we do that. But know that it's not 100% necessary. So if you don't have tape and you don't want to go out to the stores, most of us are quarantined at home. Don't feel like you have to. All right. let's move along. What we're going to do next is, I'll show both. We're going to do this waterline on the horizon. It is really dark blue, so it's not going to be diluted as much with the water as we did with the blue in the sky. And then down in here along the cliff, I wanted it to look like there are waves crashing against the rock and they're causing this spray. So there's white, the little white dots are done with the marker, but I left this area white and I actually used my fingertip to kind of dab it in there. I tried using the brush, it worked okay, but my fingertip is the one thing that really worked. The other thing that I have used before is like you can use a corner of your rag. Like I could tear off a little piece of this and use it. I'll show you. I use it kind of like I would a sponge. Okay, so let's have a look at that. We're gonna just paint from this horizon line down maybe 1/4 of an inch. And then I'll show you from there. All right, let's use the same brush. And let's go ahead and dip the brush in the blue, kind of spread it around up here. Hopefully, yeah, you can see there. And let's just do a nice dark line along the horizon. We want to have the water line show. Oh, my dog. She's mad because I've been working all day and haven't spent a lot of time with her just because I've been busy. Okay, so I want a nice strong line here. And I can tell already I didn't draw a perfectly straight line. It's funny, once you get the paint on there, you realize, oh, my horizon is sinking. Okay, I'm going to wash my brush off and just kind of scrape it on the edge of the cup so I can knock off extra water. And I'm just going to, look at that. When you add that water in there, the paint starts pulling into it. It is so cool. What this does, we're going to lighten it up as we get closer to the rock. And then right about here, I want to leave this space open for right now, but I'm going to come back in the dark blue and pull some of that down because I felt like I ended up with too harsh of a sudden change of color. We can put some gray on here too, because technically, yeah, the water reflects the sky, so it would have some gray in there too. But we'll do that in a minute. I want to show you now the technique that I was talking about with the finger painting. Here's what it's like if I use the brush. I just use the tip of the brush and I just sort of dot along here. And I didn't really love that, but I really liked using my fingertip. Or, like I said, you can use part of your paint rag, paper towel, whatever. I just dipped it in my little well of paint here. And sort of dab it along. I feel like it's drying a little fast. So I'll dot some on here and just use my finger. Dab, 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 dab. Dot, 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 dot. You can always kind of smear it around with water if it felt like it just got a little yucky. Having a little blue down in here, like really pale blue, is going to make the white dots you do with the pen really stand out though. So you don't have to leave it completely white, but light. Okay, that's pretty good. It kind of has that look of like bubbling foam, sort of, if you think about it that way. It's all psychology. And now I want to, this is drying already. I want to put a little of this gray into the water, just up in this flat area. So I will put a little drop of water in the well. Sometimes it'll pick up the dried bits of India ink, which that's exactly what it did for me. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that's pretty good. I have a little too much water on the brush, so I'm just going to come in and dab it off. And I might add just a tiny bit more black. It's so hard to know what's too much. until you paint on. And that's what your practice paper will be for. You can always go, oh yeah, that's going to be too dark. And I'll dilute it with a little water. Dilute it with a little water and say, oh yeah, this is about right. Okay. Go over your blue back here. Reawaken it. Carefully go along the edge of the cliff. And as you get down here, just use your fingertip to sort of mess up any harsh lines you might have. And you can always go back and add a little blue back in there if it felt like it took away a lot of that. But I do always just mess up the edge of it with my finger. That looks just about the way I want it to look. And hopefully yours does too. Hopefully you haven't gone too crazy yet. Just know the first time you use watercolors is very frustrating. And for me, I'm closer to that than I am with the way, like I can't really remember the first time I used acrylic. I was 16 years old. And I remember thinking sometimes, some of the paintings I did back then, I was like, oh, those are so good. And then I looked at them later when I was in college. I was like, what? Those are bad. But you might be frustrated at this point. We're gonna climb out of that hole. The watercolor paintings, like the acrylic paintings, go through a period of time where they don't look so hot quite yet, and you can't see what it's gonna look like in the end. But every little detail we add to it brings it closer and closer to looking really good, the way it should. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're going to start working on layering colors into the Cliffside. And so the color that is up for duty right now is the coffee brown. Let's go ahead and we're gonna use this number 6 brush a lot. You might have to refresh it with water. Let's add a little water into the well above the brown. And let's get some brown pigment mixed in there. This can be pretty dark because when you paint it here, it's going to be really light. It's going to be quite a bit lighter than the way it ends up. But you can see there are some parts where I left just that lighter golden brown. Because I know here in Oregon, sometimes you see the big dunes and the sand is that really funky brown color, just like what we've got going on here. So I'm going to first go along the edge. And then I sort of leave bits of white, because those little bits of white are going to have green and slate and all kinds of other colors in there. I wanted sort of a colorful but muted thing going on here. So natural colors, but not just all one color. And you can go ahead and go along here and kind of color that in. It can be solid there. Along here. This feels ugly. And it's real random. I know you guys don't like random. I don't necessarily either. This is where we have to just set that aside and know that it's going to start as bare bones. In fact, that's what it looks like, bare bones, skeletal, and it's going to get there. All right. The sky and water are looking pretty good. I don't think I'm going to have to go back and do anything with that. But know that you can if you need to. All right, I'm going to wash the brush. I guess I don't really need to because I am going to mix some colors together. I want to do brown and blue. Blue first. I always wash the brush before I dab into the second color to mix because you'll kind of pollute that first color. So the brown and blue, as I just go ahead and do that, the brown and blue makes a nice deep slate. This is a great one to go along the edge here. And then I'm concentrating primarily on the white areas, but feel free to overlap any of the brown areas too. You can add a little water to spread things out a bit, but I don't add a ton of water here because I want it to be pretty dark and opaque in the end. I'm going to leave this surface area kind of light right now. Now along the cliff edge here, I always put a little bit darker. So I'm using this slate color because I think about it like this is sort of carved out. Don't want to get too close to there. So it's casting a little bit of a shadow. I'll just sort of brush that downward. And your brush stroke should match the way the cliff goes. You can reshape anything on the edge of the cliff if needed. This is where, remember, we drew it real angular, and I was saying we'll fix it up with paint. This is where you could like make some parts that sort of poke out, like they're rocks embedded in the side. Down in here, we draw some of the water coming in with that white paint marker. It looks cool. I'll show you. You can see that there. So we're still in the bare bones part. I do want to take this color, this slate color, and I'm going to add a little tiny bit of yellow to it, but let's wash the brush so we don't pollute our yellow. Go ahead and poke it in there. Let's add some yellow here. So this definitely turns it more of a grassy green, which is great because we're going to be painting grass. Let's go ahead and paint the top edge here. We've got more stuff to do on this cliff, so don't worry if it doesn't look great. Mine definitely does not. Just go ahead and brush that down. You can add a little water down here to sort of let it fade out. And we're going to deepen this. Like I said, everything is layered. We layer like crazy. I do like the little bit of lighter. The reason I have that where we just use water and sort of let it fade out. In a little bit, we're going to put a little yellow glow here. And I was thinking, okay, maybe the windows are casting a little warm glow on the grassy area there. And I did that on this one too. And I added a little white from the lighthouse light. So there's options for you. Let's take some of this green. And I imagine there's lots of moss growing in and around here as much as it can. It's probably getting flooded with lots of water all the time. But just with how damp everything is, let's go ahead and go over this. We want to darken that a little bit. It's looking a little too brown. And now I'm going to just wash the brush, and I'm just going to use water here. I don't want a ton of water on the brush, so we'll just lightly damp it like twice on the towel. And I'll just use that water to sort of spread everything out. Still got layering to do. The fun is not over yet. We're actually going to put a little black in here in a little bit. I feel like I didn't quite come to the edge down here. So if you find that you're also in that same situation, feel free to just carefully go along the edge there. Our little nautical rope is going to clean up any of these edges. Like I've got some funky spots where it looks sort of jagged. Don't worry about that if you have it. Your rope is going to fix everything. Okay, I want to deepen and darken the brown. Let's pull this guy over here. You can see the difference. Definitely have some green going on here. Definitely have just the regular coffee brown right here. You can see that. But I really like these deep, dark areas because they create more of a three-dimensional feel. So like right down here, I used a really dark brown to go along the edge and sort of make it look like, yeah, this drops off sheer. You wouldn't want to stand close to that edge. And I went ahead and I made areas that look like there's some other rocks and things that are darker. They're closer to your viewpoint. And then along the edge here, a dark brown. I just sort of streak it in there, just tinting this gradually to make it look the way we want it to. And so we're going to actually mix black and brown together. Let's have a look at this one. I can tell on this one, I also played around with a little blue. So that's something that can be done too. I'll show you how to do that. I kind of feel like the more colors we put in here, the better. It's not going to be wrong. In fact, it's going to look really natural in the end. Like right now, it's just sort of blah. Okay, so let's start with, just thinking, let's play around with a little bit of blue real quick. So let's take, we don't have a lot of room here. Let's take some blue, wash the brush, mix some brown in. Oops, I just streaked across my yellow. So we get that dark slate color we kind of started with. And now I'm going to wash the brush and pick up a little bit of black. It'll darken it right quick. You can see that right away. And in fact, I can see I need to add more blue. And I was lazy. I didn't wash my brush. So this is where I'm adding. I was telling you how this one has a lot of blue in here. I'm going to do that. So let's thin this down with a little water. My brush has a lot of paint on it from mixing, so I'm just going to brush it on my towel a couple times. And let's just streak some of that in there. Here's where I could create kind of a rocky ledge. And you can use just some water, sort of spread the bottom edge out. Gonna go along here. Remember I was saying that having that dark shadow here is good. And I don't want a perfect line. I want to like come down sometimes a little further so it's more of a jagged natural line. This is a good color too if needed. If you need real contrast against the sky, add this along the front edge. And you can always just take a damp brush while that paint's still wet and just let it sort of bleed out. So we're bleeding this way. We don't want it to bleed into the sky, obviously. And I'm going to create a ledge along here. It sort of disappeared. So I'll use that dark color we just made. And it would be shaded pretty well in here. Let's see what it looks like if I just add plain old blue in there. I didn't even dilute it with water. Try that out if you like it. Bring it all the way down to the bottom of the circle though. So you can see there's a lot of times I use diluted color and there's a lot of times I just use the concentrated color depending on the level of contrast I want. I've lost my ledge a bit, but I'm going to have us add a little more black and brown mix to it. Looking pretty good. I'm just sort of letting it dry for a minute and thinking about my next move. I think one thing we could do while this is drying, let's go ahead and grab, just to change it up a notch, let's grab our number 2 brush. And I'm going to dip it in water. I need a little yellow. I'm just going to pop it into this empty well here. And I'm going to put a little gold yellow here on the grass just behind the lighthouse. So that'll be our glow we have later from the windows. And you can wash that brush off. I want to tell you the ultimate palette to use, and you can find these on Blick Art Supply. It's like blick.com. I didn't want to use it tonight because I didn't want you guys to be like, hey, she's using a different palette. These butcher trays are awesome. This is a 7" by 11" butcher tray palette. And let me show you. I love it because you can spread the paint way out. And these are, I believe, $9.99 on Blick Art Supply, so blick.com. We are searching for a wholesaler for these so that we can offer them to you on our website for the same price as Blick sells them for. We just haven't found them yet. So if you want to pick one of these up, if you really fall in love with watercolor and you find you're limited by this, which, yeah, it's limiting. I like this shape actually better. I've used this one a lot, and I feel like I run out of a lot of room. I don't know if it's just the way these are, the roundness or what. But these are rad. I love them. Okay, let's go ahead and mix up our darker color to kind of chisel in there. Let's take our number 2 brush this time and pull some black up in here somewhere, or one of these wells. Very dark. Wash the brush, dry it off. Let's get some brown in there. Even more. I just sort of spread it out. I keep adding brown until you can see some brown. Like, I don't want it to be solid black. And I am using this without washing my brush between, but I know I'm not going to be using a lot more brown in the painting. Let's add a tiny bit of water to the edge here. And oops. Hey, and it happened to be red. Isn't that great? Okay, so let's see how I can fix that. It figures that my first instructional video, I would have a happy little accident like this. So just plain water, even though my water's tinted, I just sort of scrub at it like you would a dish. And then I'll take my paper towel and dab at it. Now it's not going to disappear completely, but I could use this pen and make it disappear. And I might do that later, or I might just be like, it's okay, it's my 3rd copy, no biggie. Okay, so we've got a lot of paint on our number 2 brush, just from mixing. So dab it on your towel a couple times. Let's chisel along the edge here. And again, like I was saying, make it kind of random, so that you don't have like this perfectly straight outline. You can even like kind of chisel up into the grass a little bit here and there. And I'm going to do that right through here too. I believe I have that. I keep referencing my photo. Yeah, a little bit. A little bit of paint on the brush. We're using a color that's not super duper diluted. And along here too. Any of these spots where the cliff really just drops off. When this dries, it's not going to be as dark and contrasting as it looks right now. So I'm just going to leave that, even though it looks really, really dark. But I'm going to go ahead and touch up the front edges of some of these rock formations. If you feel more comfortable using your 6 brush, go ahead, go for it. And remember, you can always take, so I've got this hard edge here, I can wash the brush and I can use just water and pull down. It's already looking nice and dark. Just feels like you'll never get there at first because of how much layering we have to do. And you can always just add water to take things away if you feel like it ended up too dark. But wait a bit, because as it dries, like I said, it lightens. I feel like I could darken this area up a bit, but I do kind of like that contrast. Maybe I'll add a tiny bit more brown to that, just a little bit, just a little dilution to the brown. Careful along the edge here where this is still wet. It'll bleed in a bit. A little bit's okay. And if you want to add any more brown up in here, anywhere, more power to you. It's a DIY cliff. You get to design your own. You could totally make it look like there's little rocky crags and things. Here I'm just using a little water, just kind of flooding the bottom edge of that out. So the front edge, the top edge of this rock formation will be nice and sharp like this. But then it just sort of fades out a bit with the water. Remember, you can remove excess paint if needed while it's still wet by using your little brush like a sponge. Just have it clean, dry it off, and literally I just kind of roll it through. I didn't really want to erase that, but I wanted to show you. So I'm going to add some of that back in. Maybe I'll mix it with this brown. And I feel like this Cliffside is just about done. If you want to add any more green back in there, you totally can. This, however, looks like a golf course, and we're going to fix that. Not that a golf course is bad, we just kind of want this, I don't know, this kind of rustic dark look you can see with both of these. I have some shrubs growing up around the lighthouse. We'll add those, but right now, I think right now would be a good time to actually color in the lighthouse. And it's fun. I like this part. Just looking at the way this is coming together. Cool. Okay. So speaking of our lighthouse, now lighthouses are typically kind of a grayish. I don't remember why I chose to make it kind of gold. Thinking here from looking at my first one, I probably felt like I had too much gray going on in here and I needed something to really make it stand out. And I thought, oh yeah, the red with that sort of golden color would look really good. So that's what I went with. But know that you can totally use just a very, very watered down India ink. Very, very watered down, definitely. Let's go ahead, if you're going to do the gold one with me, it's kind of a golden brown. Let's go ahead and take our number 2 brush. Scrape off a little. I've already got some yellow in here, so I'm going to scrape off a little brown. I am going to wash it. I'm going to mix in a little yellow. Maybe a little more. Maybe a little more. I want kind of a color that's, we call it like raw sienna or yellow ochre. So it's a golden brown. And I added just a little bit of water to this, but I want it to be fairly potent too. And here's, I'm going to dab the brush on the towel, and then I'm going to re-dip the tip of the bristles into the color. This part's kind of cool. So we're dealing with a rounded shape. The edges are going to be a little darker than we'll see on the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and outline each side. Then I wash my brush, dab off the water, and I just use water and sort of pull these two together. So then you have sharp edges with more of a faded center. I'll do that here. You have to work pretty fast. And you know, I'll even go across here like that. I feel like I need it a little darker there. Wash the brush and just use water and pull those two edges together just from the middle. So then you end up with this cool fade where it's lighter in the middle, darker on the edges. Yeah, I love that. Super fun. Now we're going to add, you know, let's go ahead and if you want to go across the top here. I do like doing that because I feel like the object above it would be shading down just a bit. Let's go ahead and add the red on there. Now I don't like just plain old straight poppy red because it's a bit bright. It is like scarlet blood red. I've got this little pool with brown, and the brown, you know, the golden brown, and the brown is actually what's going to help tint down that red to make it not so potent. So you don't need much paint. Just scrape off a bit of red, pull it in here. You can add a tiny bit more brown to that. So you're going to get brownish red. I was trying to think of a clever color name. It's just brownish red. And let's go ahead and do that thing. We're going to go down the sides. you know, go ahead and border across the top and bottom. Wash your brush off, kind of knock off the excess water on the edge of your cup, and then just pull from the edges towards the middle there. Once that's dry, if you feel like it's a little too light, maybe it's bordering on pink or whatever, and you want it more red, you can add it. Definitely, just do another coat. Let's do the same thing with the roof top and this little part. So I'll take this red, gonna trace my lines here. We're working small now. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I need to get a zoom in camera. Maybe eventually, maybe that'll be on our list. We're just gradually adding the video equipment. Now just water. And that just sort of floods in there. By bordering it off, you know, I had us trace it with the reddish color first. That borders it off so it's not, the color's not gonna like bleed out and suddenly you've got a red lighthouse. If that happens, you will have a red lighthouse and give it a dark blue stripe or something like that. You know, this could be just like a really eccentric lighthouse keeper. All right, now it's roof time. I can barely see my triangular top. In fact, I'm gonna add a little tiny bit more red in here. Right across there. It's such a tiny area to cover. Take my water and just sort of spread that out in the middle. I do see I've got an area where I feel like I need to bring a little bit of the blue sky in. And so I'm going to do that in a while. If I did it right now, it would mix with red and it would be a mess. And one thing I'll do real quick. Oops, what am I doing? I want to maybe add just a little bit of just plain brown, watered down brown, the coffee color. Because I've got some I've got some spots where the sky sort of overlapped into the side of my lighthouse because I wasn't super careful. So I'm going to do what I did before, but it's just, I added a little more brown. And I'm just sort of letting that flood in with just water. There. Now, if you feel like the red didn't really work the way you want it to, let's see what it looks like if I add just some plain old red. It's dry now, mostly dry. And by layering the red on top, I don't lose the sort of muted red color. It's there underneath. I feel like this is almost a little too wet. But yeah, you can touch up and add another little bit of poppy red anywhere that you want it to go. Keep in mind, these are weather beaten. They probably have to be painted all the time. And now we need to work on our little grassy lawn. Gonna bring it to being a bit darker with some actual shrubs and things along here. Cliff's looking pretty good. Just thinking here. I think a lot to myself. I make a lot of on-the-fly decisions. I do still want to touch up that area next to the light with some blue sky, but I'm gonna wait because I did just add some fresh red there. Let's mix up our color that we're gonna add to the lawn. So that is the green we made earlier. It was in here for me. So it was blue, yellow, and brown. So let's take blue first. Stir it around. Wash the brush. Ah. Let's add some yellow. Look how bright that is. That's a little too bright for this kind of painting. And look at me polluting my yellow. But you know what? I'm not using any more yellow, so I can pollute it all I want. And I'll take brown and add that to it. Maybe a tiny bit more blue to darken it. Tiny bit more brown. I like this color to be pretty dark. Let me paint it on a swatch of it. That's about right. Deep dark army green. It's like emerald green with a touch of brown. And how about this? Let's go ahead and start along here. And a lot of you guys have done this with me with the acrylic painting, where we are wiggling our brush up and down to create what looks like a heart rate monitor or a sound wave. That's how we create our little border of shrubs. Now what I don't want a perfectly even heart rate. This one we want to be pretty erratic. It needs to be like, oh yeah, we're gonna go up here and we're gonna drop way down. Then we're gonna go up a little bit. Then we're gonna drop way down. Then we're gonna go up really, so you want it to be pretty random. Let's start back here. If it's easier for you, some people find it better to sort of dot out the shrub line like this. We're gonna overlap the lighthouse. Let's do some over here. Overlap the bottom edge of the lighthouse so it looks really tucked in there. I'm gonna fill in the bottom edge here. Come down here. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna let this sort of dissipate into the grass, and how we do that is we use water, wash your brush, dab off any excess water, and just brush the bottom edge of this. And the water is going to pull it downward, and it's going to just sort of dissipate into the grassy area. You can add more dark if needed. I try to keep it random so I don't just have like this perfect line of hedge. There's no HOA up here. It would be cool if there was. I've always thought it'd be kind of neat to be a lighthouse keeper for maybe a really short vacation. I'm leaving this area light. I want that to be my light yellow glow, but you can paint around it, like just maybe some water. Now I'm going to add just the teeniest little dot of black to this. Look at that. That tiny dot made it so much darker. And I'm going to create a little tree area here, a little hedge. And just color that in to meet the cliff. You could even take some of it down part of the cliff if you want. Maybe there's little vines. You could even like flick upward using the tiny pointed edge of your brush, and you create these little grassy shapes. You can do that back here if you want. I love that. Why not? We'll just make some on-the-fly decisions. So adding some pops of this really dark, where we added the black to it, up in here is good. Just add a little water in here so I can spread it out. But I still want to keep a little bit of the glow on the ground. All right. So you can see we did a lot of layering. Lots and lots. And I'm running out of room. I'm going to bring in a little bit of blue very carefully in this area. It's just hard to know exactly what color and what darkness. Sometimes I'll just kind of spread it out more than I intended, just to make it look less like a patch. Like, oh yeah, I did this in the very beginning. Cool. All right, time for some fun. We are going to start working with our pens. And let's go ahead and take our black pen for right now, just to work on the lighthouse just a bit. And what I do is, at the top, I just do a spike that goes straight up, and you can put a little tiny ball on the top. And if you want to outline that lighthouse, real light, this is optional. Here's what the original looked like. Did I do that? No, I didn't do it on this one. I did use the pen to do the spike. But this gives it a very illustrative look. So you decide. Sometimes I'll just like do a non-committal outline. It's like, oh, here, a partial outline. Like you guys have all seen art like that. It does make it stand out from the background, for sure. And it's your decision. This one, I was trying to decide if I did. To me, it looks like I did exactly what I just did here, where it was like a sketchy, non-committal outline. So non-committal, I didn't outline every single aspect of it. So like I didn't outline across here. I went partway across here. I have broken up lines, but they're all going the direction they should. And so we're done right now with this black marker. Actually, no, we're not. I want to do windows. Windows. So you can do windows that are arch top, or you can do rectangular. I kind of like the long rectangular as opposed to like a little square, but it's up to you. If you feel like you want to paint them on, then you might use your tiny brush and one of the very dark colors, either India ink or the India ink mixed with brown that we did up here. But I'm just going to use the pen. I figure that's easy enough. If you want to pencil them on first, go for it. But again, it's just like my little non-committal outline. Here, I'll do a round top one down here. And then a bit later, I'm going to add a little yellow glow right in those lights. So that can be what casts the light down in here. Maybe it doesn't really work that way in nature, but hey, we're painting. We can do whatever we want. Let's do stars. Very easy. So your Posca marker, you might need to pause me and get it ready. Something I forgot to talk about in the very beginning. Unwrap it. The tip, when you first get them, is dry, and it's one of those things where you have to push it up and down, push it up and down, push it up and down. And it takes a while. I'm always surprised at how long it takes. And shake it, because the paint probably separates inside, and whatever little metal bearing in there or whatever it is, it's going to help mix it all up and make it more opaque in the color you want. I think mine is the old one. It's running out. But I can tell I've got a nice little bit of paint coming out now. You can tell the tip of this is getting a little squashed. Overuse. Okay, so now I'm just going to dot on lots of little stars. And yeah, you can tell the tip on this pen it's getting a little flat because it's making my stars a slightly different shape than I want. The gray areas would not necessarily have stars on them because they're clouds. The blue areas would be the dark blue sky. So I'll show you that with this one too. I had a lot of gray in this one, so I didn't have a lot of blue to put stars. On this one, I think my sky is bluer than ever. Now you can do some bigger ones just by swirling your pen into a little tiny circle. Here's what I want you to avoid. Let's not make patterns. I know we want to. I know our brains really, really want to go there. It's a natural tendency for all of us. And so what I do is I'll cluster lots of little stars together in one area and then move somewhere else. And cluster lots of little stars somewhere else. I really like this to have a very galaxy feel. Hopefully you guys can see the stars. I'm looking up on the monitor and I can't hardly see them at all. But I know you'll be able to see them on your paper. Put as many as you want. I always feel like the stars make it so dreamy and cozy. When I see stars, I just relax. We don't have a whole lot more to do on this painting outside of the drawing the rope, which is not as complicated as it looks. It was an add-on thing. I got it all done and I was like, I've got this crazy idea. And I went with it. Hopefully you'll start being able to do that too. It's really great when you can get to that point. And you'll have a lot of failures for sure. I definitely, even now, being a pretty practiced painter, I have a lot of things that I try to do something that's in my head and it doesn't quite come out on the paper or canvas that way. And it just ends up being painted over or thrown in the trash. I always paint over the canvases. This would be a little harder, but you know what? It can be a good doodling practice page. No, I actually do like this one. It's different. All three of them. Look at that. All three. The star patterns are different. Don't know if yeah, you can see all three. Very different. Even the grass, everything, very different. All right. Let's go ahead and put some dots for the ocean spray. And they're going to come up in here. They're going to be down in here. Down in here, they're not going to show up quite as much because we do have a lot of white going on in there, or at least I do. But if you dot them up over this dark blue, they'll really show up. And you can even dot them over this, here and there. Like, it's just starting to spray over. Maybe concentrate them where it's crashing against the rock. That would be normal. So I'm putting a load of them right there. You can poke straight down, or like sometimes I'll just go to use the side. It's still making a tiny dot. And then there's some tide coming in here. You can just do a little squiggly line or two. Makes it look like there's some water coming in here. Let's see how this covers my red from earlier. It's actually working pretty good. It's pink now. You could go back tomorrow and add more stars. You go back tomorrow and add more spray from the water coming in here. You could come back a month from now and change it up. But I'm going to show us how to do this awesome light burst, which we would not be able to do very well without this awesome pen. And like you can use acrylic paint and do this, or a type of opaque watercolor called gouache. But I'm going to use my handy dandy paint pen. And what I did is I drew a white circle and then I flicked outward. You're always going to flick outward. If you go inward, you'll end up with blunt ends to these flares that come out. But if you go outward, they're always pointy. Don't use a lot of pressure. Don't be scared. You can do it. Just make a circle here. Make it bigger. That didn't look good. I think it started pulling my red paint. Okay, I need to knock off some of the paint that accrued on the tip of this pen. There. Get a glob on there. And now I'm going to go out, out, out. So I make an X pattern first. I could leave it like that. Hopefully you guys can see. Hopefully you can see okay what I'm doing. And then I'm going to go straight up, straight down, straight out, straight out. And you can literally keep going and adding as many of these little flare bursts as you want. But as long as it just looks like there's a lighthouse light shining there, you're good. And let's put some yellow in those windows. And then we'll be done with this. Unless you want to add the white down on the ground, like in this glowy area. I did that on the first one, but not on the second one. So there you go. You can see the difference. I'll do it on this just so I can show you. I just think like, okay, this is going to cast a light down here. So scribble back and forth. A few little horizontal streaks. Then I'm going to use my littlest brush, number 2, just straight yellow. You don't need to dilute it at all. And paint a little yellow in these windows. So someone's home, someone's got the lights on, someone's reading a book, someone's cozy. And there you are. The other thing that is optional that you could add, which I didn't add to either of these, but hey, for the third time I'll do something different. You could add some little like hints of some breakers back here. Very light scraping of the pen. Like these are waves that are just forming. We're just seeing a little bit of the white caps. I do like that. I think that was a good decision. Voila! So now we're going to work with some pen, do some very simple drawing of the little flotation devices. I keep calling them buoys, but I don't know if that's technically what they are. I'm sure there's a name. Maybe one of you guys can tell me what it is in the comments. But let's look at the ropes. Okay, on this one, this very first one I did, I can't remember if I messed up here or what my plan was, but I felt like I should have had one more there, and I don't know why I didn't. I wasn't drinking. I'm not sure what happened. So on this one, I sort of evened them out, but they don't have to be exactly even spaced, because I feel like that's, oops, I got red on there. That's a lot of work to do to get them perfectly even spaced. And I feel like it looks fine without. I did them different colors, different colored stripes. And the rope is so simple. It's just, I love the rope because it allows us to clean up the edge of this, but it doesn't have to be perfect. If you would rather have just a circle and no rope, you could put this back on the top very carefully, line it up, and use your black pen and trace around it. But I think we're going to go extra. We're going to make the little buoy things. I'm going to use pen, but you guys probably will want to use pencil to draw the little buoy things. They are shaped like jelly beans. They're just kind of like a long oval thing. And I'll do one right here on the side first. So I just do this. It's like an oval that's butted right up against the circle. And it's okay if it even overlaps a tiny bit. And then I'll do another one. It's kind of shaped like a flat jelly bean. And I'm just going to go around and just sort of eyeball. I'm going to untape this. You guys use your pencil if you want. I've drawn them like 3-4 times now, so I feel pretty confident going just for the pen. And I'm definitely the type that I do a lot of illustration. And I don't pencil a lot of things unless it's something that, you know, I'm struggling with. So here you can see I'm turning this just to make it easier for me. And I try to just sort of make these the same size. But don't get all worried if they're not. One more. It would also be cool to make this look like a ship wheel. I didn't think of that. There. That looks, they're pretty evenly spaced. I know they're not exact. If I were to measure them, they're off. But then I'm going to go through, I'll start with this first one I did. I just do 2 stripes. And they're very slightly curved. Just to kind of indicate the roundness of the object. It's just a big bold stripe right in the middle that we will color later. Now feel free to pause the video and draw all your little weird jelly beans with stripes in the middle with the pen after you've penciled them in, if that's what you did. And then when you're ready to move on, unpause me and we'll get back to it. But I'm going to go ahead and continue on with the rope. And it's pretty easy. All right, I'm going to start with the rope. It's very easy. I know I've said that a million times. But each one of these has a knot at each edge. So a knot here, 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 a knot here. Oh, I forgot to do stripes on this. That's funny. Maybe you have 2 little knobby knots, or maybe you have 3. It really doesn't matter. Drunk fishermen tied them. We'll just say that. So I do, like, they're little oval shapes that are right at, butted up to the edge of each of these. And they're touching the edge of the painting. I do occasionally like to make it different, and I'll do like 3. I feel like, you know, it's probably not always perfect. Gives it, I guess, more of a rustic feel. I was trying to think earlier when I was getting ready to teach this, like, what shape could I call these? And they're like mini versions of these ovals, but I thought they're little smokies. Little smoky shapes. Sort of. They're not quite a circle. Kind of more ovalish. There. You can do that with pencil or you can go for it with pen. It's a very simple little shape to draw. So if you're feeling confident, just go for it with the pen. And now for the rope. This is where I'm going to go along the edge here, meeting knot to knot. I feel like I could have made a pun there. We're going in knots. And then like this side, it's a rope, so there's going to be some little wobbly areas. That's the nice thing. We can be wobbly here. Yay! So feel free to go with just your pen. But if you're really, really scared, pencil it first. Hey, I've been there. I know how that feels. All right, getting there. I have always wanted to live by the ocean, and I love, oops, that made a funny streak of my marker. I love the Oregon coast so much because I love rain. I'm weird. I was born and raised in Oregon, and I looked it up once. I'm actually what's called a pluviophile. Sounds really bad, but it's someone who loves rain, and that's me. I just happen to love rain, so I feel like I could live at the coast. And I like the sunshine too. That's not saying like I hate sun, but I just am one of those like, I just feel good when it's rainy out. It's weird. Okay, so now I'm going to, for the rope, I'm going to make these angled lines. Just like diagonal, like you would have on a rope. Don't worry about the knots. We will stripe those too, but we're not right now. But yeah, my favorite beach town, for those of you who are in Oregon or maybe have traveled here or want to travel here, there is on the sort of a central southern coast of Oregon, there's a little town called Yachats, and it looks like it's spelled like Yachats, but it's actually pronounced Yachats, of course, one of the Native American words. I actually don't know what it means. I'll look that up sometime. But the reason I love this town is because it's very non-touristy, and the restaurants that are there, they're really like quirky, and it makes me feel like I'm up like off Alberta or something in Portland. Just really artsy, quirky, good food restaurants. My favorite one is called the Lunacy, and that is it's like rated as like the top clam chowder in Oregon along the coast. It might even be more like all the way up. I don't know where it was rated at, what distance, but it's good. Really good clam chowder, awesome fish and chips. But yeah, little town of Yachats. Super beautiful, great people there. Love it. I could live there. All right, enough talking about Yachats. Oh, I want to stripe the little knots, and that's really simple. It's just, you can fit maybe one or two. I don't line them up with each other because I figure they're tied, and so you're going to be seeing a different part of the knot. Maybe some will have two. Yeah, we discovered Yachats because someone booked a paint party there for Paint Your Pet 2 years in a row. It was a big dog camp event, and we did Paint Your Pet. And I was like, I love this town so much. I love the town. I love the beach, the big huge rocks out on the beach. Just very different than what I was used to We always would go to this little place called Lincoln City or Newport, which are very, very touristy. Great places too, very pretty, lots of neat things to see, but Yachats felt like home. All right, let's color these flotation things in, and you choose. I have some where I colored the stripe one color, and like, here we go. Here's your Oregon ducks. You can make orange if you're a Beavers fan. There's orange, and then you can do black. So the orange is lemon yellow and poppy red. Any sports team you want to go with if you're a sports fan, or just wing it, go with whatever you like. Probably your number 2 brush would be the one to use. Let's use what little paint we have left. I don't have a lot of room. I'll just start with blue. I feel like I have a lot of water on my brush, so I'm going to dab it off. And I'll just paint the blue stripe on this one. And so that I don't constantly have to wash my brush, redip, wash the brush, redip. While I've got a color on my brush, I'll color another one of these, but I'll color the sides, the end pieces, the blue. And I didn't really dilute this color. I'm using straight on pure blue. My car is this color. I just love it. It's called like electric blue or something like that. All right, I'll wash the brush now. If I end up needing more blue, I'll go back to that later. But I'm gonna go for the red. Just plain old poppy red here. Not really diluted much. Nice concentrated color works. Let's get a stripe in here. And then how about way over here? I'll paint these. And this is where we can use really vivid colors. There's no need to tone them down with the brown like we have been doing. So I could make, if I had room, I could make a really vivid green. Kelly green, Oregon Ducks green. I really am running out of space. It's not pretty. And so if I do it with the red, I'm going to feel like that's a little too Christmassy. So I'll go ahead and paint these guys. So this will be my Oregon Ducks one, I guess. And just so that I don't offend anybody, I have to do the Beavers. I need more yellow. This is where my husband is going to cringe. I can hear him cringing from the other room. I didn't go to either school, so I am a platypus. I'm impartial. I'm just thinking, do I want the sides? You know, I'll do the band orange. It's not quite the right color orange. It's close. I feel like I need a Trailblazers one too. And Timbers, all the Oregon teams. Okay, now I'll go back, and some of these I'm just going to leave white with a colored stripe, but some of these where I have the white stripe in the middle, I do like to add a color in here and there. So maybe I'll do orange with the blue. Maybe I'll do orange on the red. Didn't use enough orange in this painting, so here we go. This is Orange's shining star part. And my yellow, it got completely polluted, of course. I'll dab on a tiny dot here. You don't need much. These little droppers, I filled them up pretty good, so they'll last you through a lot of paintings and hopefully a lot of practice too. Here we go. Yellow. And how about here? Awesome. Got to finish off this one here, so I'm going to take my black. These will sort of disappear. They look like little gel caps. This is Tylenol. There. I like that. It's more colorful than any of the other ones that I've done. Let me show you those. And then I'll point out something. I went extra, like I usually do, and I shaded these. This one, I don't like the shading on this. It got real muddy. It was kind of a greenish color. But I used just a little brown to shade these, and it's done just like we did the Lighthouse. So I'll show you. You don't have to do it. If you like them real vivid like they are right now, I'd say just leave it. Let's see. I'll shade. I need to find here's a good one because it's white and it's dry. So this is where I want to use brown and water it down a lot. We want it really pale. It's picking up all the dried. I needed to rinse off my palette. When you guys paint, don't do what I did. I put way too much paint in these little pools here. Like the brown, I'm going to be done with this painting and that's just going to waste. I can't put it back in the bottle. So really just you can always add more. I didn't do that right. Okay, so I'm going to dab my brush on my towel several times before I touch it to the paper. And I'm going to shade on one side here with that watered down brown and the other side. So it's very similar to how we did the Lighthouse where we did the dark edges. If you want to add the water and kind of flood it in the middle, you can, but it's so small. I don't really think it's going to do a lot. I kind of just made it look like this. This one is not white, it's just dirty. Dirty and aged. It's been in the water a lot. And any of these others, even if they're painted with a color, like see how the brown kind of shades. I don't know if you guys can see it as well as I can. I feel like I could lift it up. It's upside down. There. It's done, guys. Unless you want to color the rope a certain color or add more shading on these, you are completely finished. Done and done. And with watercolor, I always want to sign it with my pencil. I never do, actually. This might be the first time I have signed a watercolor before. This is probably the second time I've signed a watercolor. But I just do my initials and then, maybe you do the date if you want. And then a lot of times people do series and so they'll be like 1/20. So, somebody wants to do 20 versions of these and sell them. There you go. I hope you guys get so great at watercolor and love it so much that you do end up making this a hobby and maybe even selling some stuff. Why not? Maybe come up with your own designs. You saw how easy it is just using a circle. And I just think of different things that go with the painting that I could add around the edges as a border that's more interesting than just tracing the circle. So like this guy here, that one was, it was supposed to look like a wood slice. And I just added the branches and leaves. This will be a really fun one for us to do when we do that. But different things, like you could, I've done another one before. I think it had probably a mountain scene in it, and I did a vine of flowers and leaves to trace around the circle. I just love doing the little circular paintings, and I think they're fun to look at. They're super non-committal. Like, I think we've been painting for maybe, I don't know, I'm gonna guess like an hour and 45 minutes. So that wasn't too bad. And cleanup is super easy. You could leave all this stuff out and clean it up in the morning. Just know your India ink would be a little harder to wash off. These watercolors wash out of this, no problem at all. India ink is stubborn. You do want to rinse your brushes off and clean them under the sink. You can use a tiny bit of dish soap if you want, but I mainly just use warm water. And then I do tend to like to reshape them while they're still damp. Kind of shape them into the little pointy bits. The India ink tends to sort of get up here in the ferrule close to the or close to the ferrule in the bristles. So using a little soapy water and just really lightly brushing it around in your hand as the water's running over it, that's a great way to clean it. Oh, I just totally messed it up. But that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed my very first watercolor class. I was insanely nervous, really weird. It feels weird to be that way, 'cause normally I get up on the stage and I've taught in front of like 100 people live, and I don't know why I was really nervous teaching this. I think it's just because it's so different for me. But I hope you guys had fun, and I hope you enjoy doing it and make it a hobby, and I'll see you for the next video. Cheers, peace out, have a good night.